Spirit communication is not hocus pocus. It's not evil. It's not negative. Everybody is capable of having a mediumistic or psychic experience, whether or not you're a medium. And it all has to do with the vibrational frequency of our electromagnetic soul interfacing with the higher frequency of the other dimension that we call the other side, which I refer to as the afterlife frequency.
Quote, a treasure trove of insights and inspiration. This outstanding book is expertly written, remarkably easy to read, and enthusiastically recommended. Jeffrey Long, MD, author of the New York Times bestselling Evidence of the Afterlife. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Wendy Cooper. This is The Wendy Cooper Show, Story Views, where I have conversations with remarkable people. Most of them are over 50. And then I turn them into a condensed version, and I create an entertaining story view. And when I say an entertaining story view, they are all very different. But they do tell a story. And you don't have to really worry about a lot of chit and chatter from me, because I take that out. And that's what I love about my story views. And I might throw a little snarky things in along the way, or, things to get us from point A to point B. But it is all about my guest. And I love creating these, so I hope you enjoy them. My guest today is who I consider a dear friend. He has helped me in many ways. I can't explain it. So it is Mark Anthony. He is the author of The Afterlife Frequency, the scientific proof of spiritual contact, and how that awareness will change your life. He is a treasure trove. And I hope you enjoy hearing today about the magnetic soul, quantum physics, why spirits come to us in our dreams, how we can connect with the afterlife, what it means to near-death experiences, the very different experiences that happen and what those mean. It's fascinating. So sit back, relax, enjoy. I think it runs about 30 minutes, and I hope you do find and read and try to connect with the afterlife by getting Mark's book, The Afterlife Frequency, the scientific proof of spiritual contact, and how that awareness will change your life. And I guarantee you that is the truth. So we're going to jump right into a story view. My guest today is Mark Anthony, JD, the Psychic Explorer. Also known as the Psychic Lawyer, is a fourth-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. This psychic explorer travels to mystical locations in remote corners of the world to examine ancient mysteries and supernatural phenomena. Mark appears nationwide on TV and radio, including CBS TV's The Doctors and Gaia TV's Beyond Belief with George Noory. He is the co-host of The Psychic and the Doc on the Transformation Network. He is featured speaker at conferences, expos, and universities, which include Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. Mark Anthony is a columnist for Best Holistic Life magazine. He is the author of The Afterlife Frequency. His other best-selling books, which I adore, are Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. Please welcome Mark Anthony to the show.
Thank you, Wendy. I always enjoy working with you. We always have a good time.
You have changed my life over the course of the time that I've known you. You have changed my brother's life, who lost his son years ago. You really changed Kelly's life from that last interview that I did with you, and we did the live reading, because she walked away and later reflected on everything, and it was just astounding. I don't know if you remember, but if you go back to that, you had said something about the Cabernet, the red wine, the this, the that, right? Paris, all of these things. After the interview, my husband loves you, by the way. I walked out and I told my husband that about the Cabernet. I said, Mark said something about Cabernet and a Merlot, and he dropped to the floor.
Really?
It was his mother telling him he was trying to choose between a Cabernet and a Merlot from France.
Wow.
He literally dropped to the floor in tears because he knew it was his mother, because it just happened as we were talking.
Wow.
So that was very incredible. Okay, you've got a new book.
Yes.
Let me jump in here. I'm asking him what the difference is between his other books that I have read and I've given as gifts, and they have helped me a lot, because I wasn't able to read his book or experience his book, The Afterlife Frequency, prior to this interview. So that's why I'm asking him, what's the difference? Is it a big departure?
I wouldn't say that it's a complete departure, because obviously my writing style is my writing style. And my writing style is I like to teach people, and I introduce a lot of new terminology. Like my first book, Never Letting Go, is a guide on the journey through grief. And that's for people when they're in that fog and you're just devastated after losing a loved one. And that book helps you get through this. And then Evidence of Eternity, I start introducing scientific explanations for spirit communication. But in the Afterlife Frequency, I do a quantum leap to a much deeper explanation of how spirit communication, how near-death experiences, deathbed visions, visitations, whether it's in a dream or you feel a spirit around you, how all these different phenomenon actually are very, very closely related. And I explain all of this on the basis of quantum physics and frequency alignment. But after years of work in a courtroom, I know not to bore a jury to death. So what I do is I explain it in everyday language and then illustrate it with very fast-moving, very impactful stories based on my experiences, observations, other people's experiences, and readings that I've conducted. And the critics so far have said that it reads like a juicy novel and you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. And so I'm very, very honored for that feedback.
Now that I've experienced the book, I can say, yeah, it is great. It really is.
This book is the culmination of my life's work, not just as a medium, but also an attorney, as a student of archaeology, theology, quantum physics, and philosophy, and consciousness, near-death experiences. And neuroscience is the study of the human brain. And essentially, the human brain is a carbon-12 and salt resonator floating in water. So think of your brain as a computer hard drive. And scientists, neuroscientists, have said that consciousness, who and what we are, is the result of chemical reactions and electronic impulses within our brain, but they completely cannot figure out how to explain this. And if you go through a neuroscience book and study it, there are hundreds of pages of functions of the brain, but maybe a paragraph or two about consciousness. Long story short, neuroscience cannot explain consciousness, who and what we are. And that's because the brain does not create consciousness. The brain merely hosts it. So think of your brain like a computer hard drive, and who and what we are the programs on the hard drive. And when we die and the organ that we call the brain ceases to function, who and what we are gets uploaded. And I like to make the joke that it gets uploaded to Dropbox if you're a Christian and Microsoft Cloud if you're Jewish, okay? Yeah. But seriously, I think that's a good analogy, and it was originally put forth by Professor Hans-Peter Dürr of the Max Planck Institute in Germany. And I mean, we're talking German physicists are saying this. And so a number of quantum physicists have begun saying that consciousness is not localized. So I began studying all this, and not only am I a medium, but when I was practicing law, I used to specialize in head injury litigation. So I studied the human brain, then all of a sudden it all made sense to me.
Wait for it.
So I developed the term The electromagnetic soul.
Electromagnetic soul.
Because that's what we really are. Our soul, our spirit, our brain operates on energy, electromagnetic energy. And so that bridges the gap between the spiritual and the scientific. That's what we really are. Eternal electromagnetic energy that is pure consciousness.
Take a deep breath, everyone. Take a deep breath.
Dr. Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona, head of the parapsychology, surgery, and physics departments. The scientists who have endorsed and reviewed the book are already using the term the EMS. They're calling it the electromagnetic soul. Why am I saying all this?
I'm sure you're going to tell us, and you're going to have a really good, juicy explanation.
Spirit communication is not hocus pocus. It's not evil. It's not negative. Everybody is capable of having a mediumistic or psychic experience, whether or not you're a medium. And it all has to do with the vibrational frequency of our electromagnetic soul interfacing with the higher frequency of the other dimension that we call the other side, which I refer to as the afterlife frequency. Look at it like this. We have 5 different types of brainwave. We have gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Gamma is like super high, frenetic, full-blown energy. Okay, that's like, think of Matamodio or Ken Jennings on Jeopardy. Okay, that's when you're in the gamma state. Beta is what we're in right now. That's the normal everyday. We can work, we can function. But then when you begin to relax, when you meditate, and Wendy, I know you're a big proponent of meditation. That's when your brain shifts into alpha waves. Then when we go from alpha into the dream state, we go to theta. Delta is very little a physical activity, but that's when your body's healing itself.
That is so interesting. I had no idea. I really didn't. Did you?
It is on the alpha theta border that psychic and mediumistic activity occur. That happens in the sleep state. And that's why spirits come to people in their dreams. I mean, think about it. Wendy, if you walked into an office and say, hey, my grandmother came and talked to me right near the water cooler here in the office, people look at you like you're crazy. But if you say you had a dream and it feels real and it had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you came out of the dream and you felt, wow, I really talked to my grandmother, that's because you did. That was a visitation.
My grandfather spent the day with me in the park after he died when I was like 10 years old.
Now, what scientists don't yet, what neuroscientists that study psychics don't yet understand is how is it that someone like me can go from the beta state to alpha theta within seconds when normally it takes hours in the sleep state. So in spirit communication, whether it's through a medium, whether it's through a deathbed vision, okay, someone who's dying and they begin to see deceased loved ones around them, very heavily documented phenomenon, whether it's in a near-death experience, okay, what happens is the vibration of the electromagnetic soul begins to align with the higher vibration of the afterlife frequency, and you get a frequency match. Think about it like this. We live in AM radio, the other side's FM radio, and we're meeting on the border between. And so that is just a very small part of what I explain in the afterlife frequency.
And it I can't tell you now that I have listened to this entire book. Yes, you'll totally get it. You really will.
Let me tell you something. When you're working with quantum physics, there was one day, Wendy, I was ready to just bang my head against the wall. Okay, it's like I was trying to understand something. I think it was space-time, which is a very complicated concept. And it took me about a month to come up with the illustration that I used to explain it in the new book. And going through my research, I saw a quote from the great physicist Werner Heisenberg. And he said, when you think you understand quantum physics, you really don't. And I started laughing because, okay, if Werner Heisenberg felt that way, I'm feeling okay about that too.
I remember at this point, I said, Mark, it just sounds like life to me.
Well, it is life. It is absolute. Wendy, I think you just explained quantum physics.
I don't know what to say here. I'm speechless. Mark Anthony just told me that I figured out quantum physics.
Think about how science has been taught. Is biology is in one arena, and biology is the study of organic substances, living beings. Then there's physics. That's the study of energy and inorganic beings. But what we've learned as physics evolved into quantum physics, we've learned that everything is composed of molecules. Okay, we all learned that in, sixth grade science. Molecules, in turn, are composed of atoms. Okay, atoms are composed of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And then with the advent of the 20th century, with advanced technology, scientists then discovered that there are particles smaller than those, which are a quantum, plural is quanta, ergo quantum physics. And so on the most basic level, everything in our material world, everything that we deal with, is made of a particle of electromagnetic energy. So on the quantum level, there is no distinction between physics and biology because everything is made at the basic building block of energy.
Okay, can you repeat that, please?
And so everything has a vibration, a frequency, if you will. My Yeti cup, okay, this has a vibration, even though it appears static and it's an inorganic piece of matter. It has a vibration, but its vibration is different than me. Its vibration is different than the radio waves that are transmitting this show. Its vibration is different than the chemical reaction, the nuclear reactions in the sun, than the air we're breathing. So everything is energy and everything has different frequencies. These are all things that came to me developing the concept of the electromagnetic soul and how spirit communication occurs. And not just spirit communication, but exactly what you said, Wendy, life.
It just dawned on me right now. The electromagnetic soul is the connection of the souls to the afterlife. Holy moly.
Before the invention of the microscope, what did people think caused disease? They thought it was noxious vapors coming up, at night. That's why, when you see like Gone with the Wind and the women are going, oh, I got the vapors, I got the vapor. That was actually a belief that there were noxious vapors and gases at night. Then people believed it was evil spirits. Okay, so there's all sorts of these crazy and non-scientific theories. And so then when the microscope was invented, biologists began to identify germs, bacterium, fungus, viruses. And so that they understood that, oh, gee, this is what causes disease. Not only do I explain these things through science, I do believe in God. And one of my favorite people in history is Nikola Tesla. You were asking about the sphere I have in my corner. That's called the Tesla sphere. He actually invented that. Tesla also invented alternating current. What Tesla said is what one man calls God, another calls the laws of physics. And I don't think that God is some inorganic, distant. I believe that God is the energy that binds and connects all of us, and that there's an intelligence that flows through this. And I was giving a lecture about this, and someone said, well, that sounds like from Star Wars, the Force. And then I hit the next slide, and I have a picture of George Lucas, who had a near-death experience when he was 16 years old. He was pronounced dead, and then he came back, and within a few years of that, had a draft of Star Wars. And the Force, if you look at it, is quantum physics. He also talks about the Force binds and connects everything. And one of the after effects of a near-death experience is the sense that we're all interconnected, not just people, but animals, the earth itself, the universe. There's this interconnectedness. When you start looking at spiritual phenomena, like the mystics and the great teachers like the Jesus and Buddha and Krishna, that talk about God in terms of light, which incidentally, the only form of electromagnetic energy visible to the human eye. Okay, God has always been portrayed or described in terms of light, and light is electromagnetic energy. So when you start looking at all of this, to me, it all came together. It all began to make sense. And a lot of people, they want to anthropomorphize God, and certainly that's very natural. But I, for one, don't believe that God is a neurotic, insecure white guy sitting on a throne with a scepter smiting people. I'm being a bit facetious there. But I know, like, you're of the Jewish faith, Wendy, and in Judaism, it's not proper to make a depiction of God, nor is it in Islam. Okay, and that's very, very fascinating because it's demeaning to the concept of God. It's the same thing in Hinduism. Hinduism's fascinating. In fact, Nikola Tesla, I believe he said that he wished that he would have been more aware of Hinduism earlier in his life, and a couple other physicists, even Carl Sagan, I believe said that. Because Hinduism doesn't say in the beginning. What Hinduism says is in a beginning, and that there wasn't just one big bang, but this is all part of the cycle of creation, life, destruction, rebirth. It's an ongoing cycle. And what do we know from the laws of physics? Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. I do not believe that faith and science are mutually exclusive. And what I was talking about, with depictions of God, I'm not crashing on the people that believe in those, because it's easier for us to relate to God in the depiction of maybe Jesus if you're Christian, or Shiva or Vishnu if you're Hindu, or perhaps Buddha, even though technically Buddha isn't God. He's a supernatural, teacher, a guide, if you will. It's easier for people to put a human face to relate to the infinity that is God, to make it more personal. And if that's what people need to do, I don't have any problem with that, because all the religions come down to nonviolence and treat people with dignity and respect. The problem is the people that start hijacking these religions, turning it into a business, and then turning it into moral justifications for their own ego-driven agendas. That's when things go wrong.
That's when things go wrong. This is my 20th time listening to this, and I'm hearing new things all the time. I can't wait to see what comes next. I hope you feel the same way.
In the afterlife frequency, I developed this 4-step process called the RAF technique: how to recognize the signs from spirits, accept them as real, feel it without fear, and then trust in the message. And you can tell the difference between a truly spiritual message or one created by the human ego. Spiritual messages are always about love, healing, and resolution. Ego-driven messages are ones that prompt people to commit acts of anger, bigotry, hatred, and violence. An agnostic is, I don't believe, but I'll believe if you show me proof. A deist is, a deist means I believe in God, but no particular religion. An atheist doesn't believe. Well, I'll take a quote from my colleague and friend, Nancy Evans Bush. She used to be the president of IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And one of my favorite quotes of hers is, atheists who have a near-death experience don't think there's a God, they know. Okay, so people who have a near-death experience, atheists that have a near-death experience, come out of the NDE believing in a greater power. But, we do live in a country where you have the right to believe or to not believe. You have the right, freedom of religion, I think, also means freedom from the dictates of religion. But you have an absolute right to be an atheist. And here's another thing I'd like to say. And when you're completely crushed by the pains of life or the death of a loved one, feel free to put your faith in nothing.
Every time I listen to this through this edit process, I'm talking to you who's listening, I am taken not aback by when Mark says that, but I know by listening to Mark's book now, The Afterlife Frequency, that, he also guides people. Part of what Mark does in life is he guides people to the afterlife, right? So think about that. Think about what that takes as a human being. And so when he says that, put your faith in nothing, it really, there's just something that, pulls on my heart. I'm so glad you're listening.
In my first book, Never Letting Go, I quoted a rabbi who said, "How can you have faith without doubt?" And many great people of faith have had periods of doubt. Mother Teresa went through years of not believing in God. There she was in Calcutta taking care of all these diseased and terminally ill people. And she felt, how could there possibly be a God? But eventually came back to believing in God. Now, if Mother Teresa can doubt the existence of God, if we all have our moments, even our years, well, then that's part of the journey. If having faith were easy, everyone would have faith. And we're all on our own spiritual journeys. It is not for me to tell people what to believe. Yes, I write books about spirituality. I write books about how quantum physics explains this. I present the evidence, and it's up to the reader to decide. But it is not for me to tell someone, well, you should be a Muslim, or you should be a Hindu, or you should be, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That is a personal decision. There's an old Hindu saying, there are many paths up the mountain. The only one on the wrong path is he who runs around the mountain telling everyone that their path is wrong.
Did you ever hear the story of the guy that was in search of the meaning of life? And he searched everywhere, right? He climbed the highest mountains. He traveled to all the cities and the temples, and he was exhausted after years of searching for the meaning of life. He finally comes across this old man in the street, and he says, if you go to India, you will find the person who can tell you what the meaning of life is. And so, of course, he gets the gear, he hires the guides, and he travels up the mountain. He gets there finally, and he recognizes it right away. How couldn't you? It had the typical candles laying around and the guy sitting there. And he says, my son, sit down. You've come a long way. You must be thirsty. Do you want a drink? Rest your weary feet. And he sits down. He says, thank you. He says, but it's been a long journey, and now I'm here, and I just want to know what the meaning of life is. And the priest looks at him and he says, my son, life is a river. The man replies, life is a river? And the high priest looks at him and says, it's not?
We're all complex individuals. I study consciousness, and there's a lot of people saying, oh, this is an illusion, it's a hologram. I don't buy that, okay? I'll tell you right now, I don't buy that. We're all unique individuals, and when we leave this world, you take you with you. We take our individuality. Think of your soul as a drop of water. Your electromagnetic soul is a drop of, water, energy. And when the body dies, that drop plunges into the eternal sea of consciousness, which I call the collective consciousness, which is then energetically linked to other spirits, And that's one teller. But spirits can see what we consider to be future events. And my job as the medium is to convey what I'm getting as objectively as possible. What I teach through the RAFT technique is how to get the most out of the experience when it happens. And it's kind of a funny story about how I developed that. I was trying to figure out, how do you explain to people who aren't mediums and have very little, natural psychic ability, how they can have a psychic or mediumistic experience. And so, and I had writer's block, so I figured that's it. I'm going for a walk on the beach because I live near the ocean. So I head toward the beach, and all of a sudden I get this tingly sensation, which I know is okay. That's some type of connection with a spirit. And I do an about face, and I decide to go for a walk on this bike path near my house instead. So it's about 11 in the morning, and I see these two objects shining in the light, and I walk up, and it's a nickel and a penny next to each other on the ground. And I lean over, and I hear both my parents have passed, and they both had mediumistic abilities. And I go to pick them up, and I hear my mom's voice. And she says, "If they're not heads up, don't touch them." And I start laughing because, that part of the family was Italian, and they have a superstition for everything, like coins, if they're not. And then I hear my dad's voice saying, "It's money, grab it." And so I'm laughing. So I pick them up, and I'm holding these two coins in my hand. I go, "Oh, 6 cents." And I go, "6 cents." And they go, okay, something's going on. Then I'm getting cold chills and tingles running through my body. And I know that, don't be afraid of that. I know that this is the electromagnetic souls of my parents. They were touching me. Then immediately in my mind's eye, I saw my dad standing in the ocean up to his waist, holding this blue canvas raft that he used to have, because he was a Navy SEAL, a scuba diver. He was a swimming instructor at the Y. And all of a sudden I go, raft, and it hit me. Recognize, accept, feel, trust. And I go, that's what they're trying to tell me. And I ran back to my house, cranked on the computer, and the words just flew out of me. And so in that moment, they told me that you have to teach people how to recognize the signs from spirits, to accept that as real, give yourself permission to have it, feel the message. This is where people get hung up. As soon as they hit the feel part, they begin to, well, that was just my imagination. That's wishful thinking. Oh, it's a coincidence. And feel is where people dead end. Once you get through feel, then you trust. It applies not just to situations like that where you feel a spirit around, also to interpreting visitations and dreams, through going to a session with a medium, trying to make sense of your near-death experience, to a deathbed vision when a loved one is dying and they're talking about people that they know who have passed. And many times bystanders will see those spirits as well. Why? Because the frequencies are all overlapping. The electromagnetic soul, it is quite an amazing entity. That to me was one of the most remarkable things that came to me when I was writing the book. I had an outline, and I didn't have the raft technique outline. That became a chapter that day.
Recently, Mark and I did a live reading with me and my girlfriend Kelly, who was in Florida, on Zoom, and it was live. And she had this type of no syndrome. It wasn't no, but it was more, I'll think about it later. Let me think about that. I'll think about that later. So Mark will explain here why the connection with the afterlife has to be a mutual connection.
Because I wrote a chapter called Avoiding the No Syndrome. And anyone that's had a reading with me or seen films of me, I always tell people, avoid going directly to no if you don't understand something. And that's why I termed it the no syndrome. No. What happens is you start generating a negative energy barrier, and spirits will start to back off. It's like you're slamming the door in their face. And energetically, you're creating this negativity, because spirit communication, it involves tuning into these higher frequencies, and it can be very subtle. And all of a sudden, if it's flooded, it's like you're trying to listen to a very subtle, high-pitched sound, and all of a sudden someone comes up and blows a foghorn right into your face. And that's the no syndrome. And a lot of people block that. Now, the no syndrome also applies to people in a profound state of grief who say, I never see my loved one, he or she never comes to me. And they don't mean to be generating that. It's because of the painful emotions of sadness and anger and frustration and loss, without meaning to. they're creating an energetic block. So the no, no, no syndrome can manifest in many ways. I mean, when people come in and go, I don't believe this, I don't believe this. Well, then, take a hike. I'm not going to waste my time trying to work with you, or people who hyper analyze every single thing. I mean, I was doing a reading just the other day, and for this brother and sister, and their parents came in, and I said, your parents are talking about your sisters. They keep giving me some kind of name like MAR, like a female MAR name. It could be Marcia. No. I said, they won't let up on this. No. I go, well, what are your sisters' names? Marlene, Margie, Marie. I go, come on. Well, you said Marcia before the reading, especially with names. If I'm very close, you got to work with me. But see, they were hyper analyzing everything, expecting everything to be precise. And that too is another form of the no syndrome.
Yeah, it was totally happening. And I'm learning with every experience that I have with a medium that you must be open and communicate, and the experience is going to be that much greater because of the energy connection.
I have a number of stories in the book dealing with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and some are very, very intense. A couple deal with military personnel. One deals with a shooting where two people were abducted and both were shot. One survived, and what she dealt with coping with that. Survivor's guilt is very, very difficult, particularly with parents who've lost a child, because even if the parent was in no way responsible or connected to the death of the child, parents still feel a sense of responsibility. It's part of being a parent. This is your precious baby, your child, and it doesn't matter if it's a baby or an adolescent or an adult child. The bond between a parent and child is like no other. And so there's a couple different things in the book that I teach about confronting these, dealing with them. Spirit communication can be a therapeutic step there. Also, that we have to realize that there's nothing that we can do about the fact that these things have happened to us or that our loved one has died. But what we can do is learn how to change the way we respond to it. So that's another one of the healing modalities of the afterlife frequency.
Absolutely healing. I'm telling you, it's absolutely true.
I was recently the keynote speaker at the 2021 International Association for Near-Death Studies annual conference. And we were having a group discussion. And that's what I said, NDEers, mediums, people that engage in these experiences or these experiences happen to them, we're constantly having to justify ourselves. It would be nice to get past that to where we can just get to how this spiritual contact and this awareness will change your life. What it will do is it will help you understand that spirit communication, which has traditionally been feared as paranormal and supernatural, is actually a normal part of nature. And that when we are aware that it isn't hocus pocus, that there is a logical scientific basis for it, and through that awareness, you will begin to recognize the signs from spirits, accept them as real, feel it without fear, and trust in the message, the afterlife frequency. People ask me, if you have a message, what is that message? That God exists, heaven, the other side, nirvana, whatever you want to call the afterlife, exists, that our electromagnetic soul is an eternal living being, that we can communicate with souls, and that we will be reunited with our loved ones when it is our appointed time to leave the material world.
Well, that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to thank Mark Anthony for putting up with my editing of this story view. I hope you learned a lot. I do hope you pick up the book, The Afterlife Frequency. It is available everywhere. And as of this editing version of the story view, November 6th, it is a #1 bestseller. Isn't that awesome? It's fun, it's fascinating, and I think it will change your life. So The Afterlife Frequency, everyone. I'm your host, Wendy Cooper, and I'll see you next time. This has been a C-Spot Run production, music by Tom Orsi. Other music credits can be found in the show notes. All rights reserved. You can learn more about me at wendycooper.com or the letter C, cspotrun.com.